Hey YouTube, Awesome Rider here with a Kamen Rider Gotchard video. This is like sort of a check-in review point. I guess I'm primarily reviewing episode 14 or whatever it was, but this video is more so going to be discussing the revelations we got around Gotchard Daybreak and kind of some revelations about some of the plot in general. I will probably on the periphery touch on some of the stuff that's been happening, and I'll update you on when the next Gotchard video is coming at the end. But anyway, in this week's episode, it was a pretty big episode, and honestly one of the strongest in the series. Did it make me like Hotaro? No, I still just hate his face. It was a good episode. I did like it. It doesn't make me like his character or anything anymore. I'm still not feeling the characters, but within the show, they certainly have a lot more going on. Not to the degree that when I stop watching, I'm theorizing about it, but it's enough to keep you at least very mid-level engaged while you're watching it, which is much better than Kemi's The Fest for 15 episodes. But anyway, in this episode, Hotaro, the Gotchard Daybreak has been like, you need to get stronger, Hotaro, you need to get stronger. And he's like, you can get stronger if you just take this power up. And he's like, no, I'm gonna do it myself. Kemi, my face punchable. And so he's like, okay, fine. Then you need to find, you originally once made this and I'll send you back to when you did. I'm like, what? And I was thinking it was a previous episode and maybe it had to do with like Super UFO or whatever, but no, it was like little kid him from when he didn't remember it. So he sends him back to see his little kid self in the alchemy dimension or whatever it's called, where he's like, that's when he learns and sees like, oh, I played with Kemis. And side note, it was nice to actually see some other Kemis, including Steamliner. I actually saw someone comment about that saying like, it sucks that Hopper's the one that always gets like the attention, but there's no like little Steamliner toy that he has around. So there was actually several of those. I feel like this should have been happening way more often in the series, to be honest. I mentioned this multiple times when I was reviewing the series properly, but I feel like I'm not getting attached or invested or liking the Kemis that much because they feel so throwaway. But if they had had them around, gave them a little more personality, not that this episode I was like, Kemis! And I started doing that, but I'm like, we should have had more of this going on. It shows him like, oh yeah, this is why I liked Kemis, and I don't know why I don't remember this, but good going, me. And then, like, little kid him manifests these goggles that somehow have to do with his dad, which is the catalyst for what makes his power up. And like, at the end of the day, little kid him gives it to him, so he didn't earn it either. I mean, he went to the past, and I mean, like, did he earn it by going into the past? Because he just kind of forked stuff up. Because like, the first thing Gotchard Daybreak says to him is, don't touch yourself. Don't touch little kid self. I'm like, that has a lot of layers to it. And immediately the first thing he does is screw that up. And like, after he screws it up, there isn't even a moment where he's like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. He's like, screw it. I've already, I might as well just, make a sandcastle with myself. Like, I hated how stupid Hotaro was in this episode for that, because he got warned that. You knew that he was going to end up interacting with him, but I hated the fact that he didn't even for a second think, oh, I screwed up. He's like, no, I'm Hotaro, I can do no wrong. My face is punchable. Anyway, basically then we get backstory on what else was going on at the time, as we see the villains in the past, and this is another major revelation, and we see Rin's dad, and we learn the reason that everyone thinks Rin's dad betrayed everybody and stole the belt is because they used that memory-altering technology on them, and that's the reason why, which I actually kind of like that. I like that it wasn't like, he stole it, but for a good reason. I mean, he still did end up having it, but it's dealing with that mind control stuff, which I feel like is going to have a lot more to do with the series overall. It was brought up significantly at several key points during Alvarod's story. It's been kind of brought up with that one character whose name I forget, but I saw him in the background of a scene in this episode. I'm like, oh yeah, your useless ass still exists. But that was brought up with him, so I get a feeling this whole memory wiping storyline is going to be more of a major part of the story than I thought it was going to be, since it's being used here. But that was one of the major revelations of the episode, was what happened with Rin's dad. And then, like, Hotaro saves his young self, and then after that he gets the goggles. So it's like, again, he didn't earn it. And it creates kind of a timey-wimey thing, because then he gets it, and he comes back, and then Daybreak starts disappearing, and when he sees Gotchard use this new power-up to transform into his new form, the Gotchard Fire form, he says, good job, me, which is the same thing that Hotaro said to his younger self when he saw him fighting with the Kemis. And so it is revealed that Gotchard Daybreak is future Hotaro, which was one of the most common and pretty much the most likely outcome. In some ways, I kind of didn't want it to be him or to be a red herring, and I just can't imagine Hotaro being that cool. I don't know if it's the same voice or voice actor, but it even sounds like a cooler voice than Hotaro's twerpy little voice. Regardless, I'm surprised at how quickly they wrapped that up, and kind of disappointed, to be honest. On one hand, it's kind of cool that they revealed it in a way and didn't drag it out, but on the other, I wanted to see the mystery go a little bit longer, because it was probably the only thing that I was curious about. Like, everything else going on in regards to, like, the organization and the betrayal feels like their plot's taken from other Rider series. Like, it's engaging enough. Like I said, I keep pointing, this is where I watch it. It's engaging over here when I watch it. It's engaging enough. It's more engaging than when I was watching the show before, but it's nothing I haven't seen before. And a mystery identity character like this isn't nothing I've never seen before, but it's always something that interests me. I love a good mystery identity hero type of story. That was the thing, probably the only thing I was actually having like a positive curiosity towards. And I wanted to see him stick around. I guess maybe the timeline changed or whatever, but it would have been cool to see him interact with them. It did remind me of several different storylines. Like, it reminded me of the Omega Ranger storyline in SPD, where he comes and warns because he came to help Hotaro, because specifically if Hotaro didn't get good, stuff was going to get apocalyptic. And it also reminded me of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, like, not just for this storyline, but the series overall, where like the first handful of episodes of Arc 5 were more light and fun and like, you know, ladies and gentlemen, and then things really get going when a doppelganger of the main character shows up. So that was kind of neat. It kind of reminded me of that a little bit. And I do, even though, again, I liked this story, I think it was a little bit messy and I didn't like the whole Hotaro. I was like, I gotta earn it, but I don't want to take it from my future self, my younger self. I think there's some weird stuff there, but I do kind of like that like weird little timey-wimey origin parallel with him getting the goggles from himself, being inspired by going to his future self. That's another thing. I'll be curious if time travel has anything more to do with the series. Was it just this one arc, or is it going to have more major implications? Because if it does, I'm a sucker for a good time travel storyline. I'm not opposed to that. So I thought that was pretty cool, actually. I kind of liked that. I remember hearing a rumor that Gotchard Daybreak was supposed to be actually the next power-up, but Gotchard was doing so poorly in reception and stuff that they needed kind of a kick in the pants, so they invented this new character for it. If that's true, that kind of makes sense because the two fire powers seem lined up. I wonder if he'll ever get the Daybreak power. Will we ever see Daybreak again? I don't know. We'll find out. Some of this and less in the series. I do have to say, even though I like the Guy Fieri fire form okay, it's not anywhere as cool looking as Daybreak. And like Daybreak seems to note that this form being the one he takes instead of the Daybreak form seems to indicate a timeline change. That situation also reminds me of like Geo, where even though there was a reason Grand Geo didn't look like Oma Geo because he had the Drive Watch from the future, not the present, it is funny that like you have this future awesome looking final form all through the series, and then like the main proper final form is this fugly Toku amalgam. It kind of reminds me of that. Not that the fire suit is bad, but it's definitely not as cool as Fire. There was one more big revelation, which was that the reason Hotaro's memories were erased was younger Han's memories were erased by Rin's dad. It sets Hotaro up to be being watched by the dad. That sounds weird, but you know what I mean, to be a candidate for Gotchard. That still leaves some questions though, like how did he get there? It might have to do with his dad, because with the goggles and stuff, they're clearly setting up stuff around his dad. So maybe it had to do with that. I think that's still a mystery outstanding. Like maybe the reason he was there has to do with his dad, or maybe he just wandered there one day. But there's still questions, but we find out his memory was erased by Rin's dad. I actually kind of wished that, even though it makes sense because they seem to be putting emphasis on this memory erase stuff, I kind of wish that maybe somehow him interacting with his past self prevented him from remembering that. Kind of like in a weird way, the way the Doctor Who time travel works, where when he meets past versions of himself, he doesn't remember that until the timeline catches up. Like in Day of the Doctor, you know, the War Doctor and the 10th Doctor helped the 11th Doctor with a problem. And so they obviously already experienced it, but they're not going to remember doing that until they catch up to the 11th Doctor. I don't know, it wouldn't be quite like that, but I was kind of hoping for that just because I like the timey-wimey stuff. The last thing I have to say, though, is what is this final form? This fire, what is this form? Is it a super form? It's not a mid-series form. Like, first of all, I don't care about the classifications. Like, people get so hung up on it. It's such a pathetic thing to argue about. Like, it just doesn't matter. My thing is that I hate how many forms we're getting now. It used to just be main, mid-series, final. And then now we have like main, super, mid-series, final, and then super and mid-series have like 15 slide evolutions. I don't care about what you classify them. If I want to call, you know, the mid-series form the gobbledygook form, that's my right. The classification is meaningless, it's stupid. I don't care about what people want to classify it as. But I thought that the super forms were the UFO and T-Rex form. So what is this? Like, again, it's not like, what's the classification? It's just like, we have so many main forms now. Like, what is this supposed to be? It reminds me of in Saber, I think it was, where right after we got like, it was like the super form or whatever, before we got the mid-series, just this random other form appeared. I'm like, what the hell is this? And it was, I think, the movie form. I mean, I don't think this is a movie form, maybe, I don't know, but like, what the hell is this? Like, there's no rules anymore. Anyway. But what do you guys think of the Super Gotchard form, or the new Super Gotchard form power-up? What do you think of the Gotchard Daybreak storyline and all the revelations? Let me know in the comments as always. As far as other coverage, we are pretty much around the corner for Rin's official debut in the show as a writer, as well as Valvarod's. I wouldn't be surprised if those are back-to-back. I'm going to cover those, like in regards to talking about how I feel about their debut. Whether I do them separately or together, honestly, is going to depend on how busy things are, because it's been a pretty slow month in regards to things to cover. So if it's like a really slow week next week, I might just do an individual video for Rin's debut. But if like for whatever reason a bunch of Boom Boonger news happens or whatever and the week is packed, then I'll just cover their debuts together. So it's really just going to depend on like, hey, things are slow right now, this can be 2 videos. But anyways, until next time guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder signing out.